What's going on, everyone? Today I'm going to make some desk drawer fronts out of scrap wood. I had some leftover offcut scraps from other projects. These three boards had some really unique grain patterns and a lot of cracks, and I wanted to showcase those cracks by filling it with epoxy. But first I'll go in all three drawer fronts and put in bow ties. I like using these bow tie jigs. It kind of helps speed up the process, and you don't need to be super accurate with it. The good thing about filling these bow ties with epoxy is the bottom of the bow tie doesn't need to be super clean. If you are going to put in a different species of wood, you definitely want to go ahead and take the time and make sure that bottom is clean and flush. I'll just take my time and go through all three drawer fronts doing these bow ties. It only took about 15 minutes, nothing too crazy. I'm really liking the way that these bow ties are turning out. I know bow ties aren't for everybody. I like the imperfections that it gives off though. It gives it more of a classic, rustic look. And that completes all the bow ties. Next, I'll go ahead and mix up some epoxy. This is a tabletop 1-to-1 mix ratio made by Promise Epoxy. Each epoxy manufacturer does things a little bit differently, so just read the instructions. I like to keep it simple, so I like 1-to-1 ratios. I live here in Ohio and the weather's starting to cool down a little bit. Epoxy doesn't mix well in low temperatures, so I'll use a heat gun to heat it up. Before pouring epoxy, I'll go in and tape up the bottom of the board so it doesn't leak through. You can make molds, but projects like this, it's completely unnecessary. If you tape it up well enough, it's not going to leak through. Before I mix in any pigment, I'll use a clear and put down into the crack. This will make the pour a little bit easier when I go to pour that crack. It helps prevent bubbles. And this is a pink pigment. It's pretty bright and colorful, which is what I want. I want it to pop well against that walnut. When I pour projects like this, I intentionally pour over, so I want it to round over the edges a little bit. The bottom of these bow ties does have cracks, as you can see, and that epoxy will go down in it, so you'll lose some. So to compensate for that, I'll pour over. I'll come in the next day and mill off the top of the epoxy. I don't want to mill down too far because I'm not trying to get into the wood yet. I just want to limit the amount of sanding I have to do. So it's been prepped and ready for the next pour. I'll go ahead and mix up some more epoxy. This time I'm going to use teal. I really like the way that this color turns out. It pops really nice against the walnut and it mixes well with the pink. I've used this color on multiple projects. It's definitely a popular color. Again, the same as the bow ties, I intentionally pour over. It doesn't take much time to mill these down the next day. Go back in and blow out the bubbles. The next day I go back and mill it back down. This time I will mill into the wood a little bit, since I will no longer be pouring any more epoxy. Now that that's done, I'm going to take it over to the 6-inch joiner, put clean edges on it. These boards were pretty bowed and cambered, so we're trying to square it up. That way we can take it over to the table saw. Now I'll go ahead and rip it down to size. I am going to rip it down smaller than expected. That's because I plan on putting cherry around all four sides. These drawer fronts are actually for a desk I just recently built. The desk consists of walnut wood and cherry wood, and it has both the teal and the pink epoxy in it as well. Once I'm done with the table saw, I'll take it over to my miter saw station and rip it down to its final width. So the walnut sections are completely done. I had some off-cut cherry scrap wood laying around. I'm gonna go ahead and measure it out, make sure I have enough to use. I want to make sure that they're at least close to the same thickness. This will save me some time when I have to mill it back down. Now I'm going to cut down the slats. I just set the fence for 1 inch. Now it's back over to the miter saw. I use T-tracks on the side of my miter saw station. That way I can put adjustable stops. It definitely makes quick work on a lot of projects. So it's time to glue up the cherry to the walnut. So I'll put glue on the sides. I want to keep this project moving fairly quick, so what I'll do is I'll use brad nails and nail it into place. That way it gives it time to cure overnight. You don't need to do this, but I got a lot of things going on and I don't have time to wait. I really like the way the cherry blends well with the walnut. Usually when I mix species with walnut, I'll use a lighter color than cherry, usually maple. At the end of the video, I actually show the full desk with the drawer fronts on it. These two colors complement each other really well. Now when that's done, I'll go in and mill it down. This will be the last milling section. I'll go ahead and use a round over bit on the front of the drawers. I'm going for a more mid-century look. Then on to the final sanding. I start off with 80 grit. I'll water pop it. I like to water pop because it gives you like a preview of what it's going to look like. And then I go up to 150 grit. This is as high as I'm going to go with the sanding. I end up putting on polyurethane, so you're going to sand it back anyhow later, so there's no need to go super high. And there it is. So far so good. I'm going to use cherry stain and pine drawer pulls. Normally you don't really need to use a cherry stain on cherry wood, but with the walnut and the pine, it'll tie it all together. I ended up getting the drawer pulls at Home Depot. You can already see those colors popping. I like using rags whenever I apply stain. I feel like I can control it and push it into the fibers a little bit more. And as always, when you're done applying the stain, you want to go back in and wipe off the excess stain. Now it's time to get those little guys. I wasn't sure how that pine was going to mix with the walnut and cherry, but after staining, I mean, you can't tell the difference. Then I go in and apply now I'm applying polyurethane. It's a high gloss finish. I don't show it in the video, but I'll actually do 2 coats, sand, and then a 3rd coat. You can go really high with these coats. I didn't feel like it was needed. And for the drawer pulls, I'll just use a rattle can lacquer. All I do is just make sure it has the same finish and same high gloss. Put on several coats. You'll spray it on, let it dry, spray it on, let it dry. It's a really nice thing about lacquers, you don't need to sand it back down. Polyurethane though, you need to sand it down. I'll go up to 340 grit. And it turned out pretty good. I could probably stop right there, but I like a little extra shine, and that's where the beeswax comes in. This is definitely overkill, but I just like the way it looks. You can see the colors just coming to life when you push it in. With beeswax, you want to go ahead and rub it all in, let it sit for 20 minutes, then rub it back off. But just so you're aware, it's really tough getting all the way off. I can't tell you how many projects me and my wife tried moving into the house, and it was slipping through our fingers because it gets to be super greasy. Over a period of time, it does fully absorb. You'll just have to keep going in and wiping it down. And now it's time to install the drawer pulls. It's not rocket science, just find the center line. I've learned to take my time in this process. I've rushed through these things. It's not hard, but if you rush through, sometimes you'll have one drawer pull that's off center. If you're OCD like I am, that will drive you insane. So just take your time, make sure they're all centered up. And then I'll start drilling out the hole. I'll start with a very small bit, and then I'll work my way up in thickness. I'm trying to alleviate as much tear out as possible on the backside. And then I'll go in and put a countersink on the backside, because that bolt head for the drawer pull is a little thick, and I don't want there to be gaps. So I want that bolt to be flush with the backside of that drawer. What I don't want is having gaps between my drawer front and my actual box drawer. This is the first time I actually used wooden drawer pulls. They actually turned out pretty nice. And there it is completed. These drawer fronts turned out really well. As you can see in the full desk, all the colors blend. I've had some really good feedback so far on these, but I am curious what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. Do you like the epoxy? Do you not? Epoxy's not for everybody. And there you have it. Thanks for watching, everybody.